Hey everyone, Mo here, and before the video begins, I just want to let you guys know that my schedule has opened up for me to do coaching again. So if you're interested in private one-on-one coaching for me to help you, whether you're a newer player and you want to excel at the game very quickly and learn the fundamentals without developing any bad habits early, or if you're an experienced player who's already maybe platinum or diamond in your top 1%, but you need some help filling in the gap to get you to that 0.01%, to make you just some of the best, then hit me up on Discord and I can get you in some private one-on-one coaching lessons to help you polish up any skills you want to refine and help you learn all of the secrets to becoming a top player. That's it. I hope you enjoy the video. Hey everybody, Mo here, and in this video of Deck Guides for Dummies, I'm going to be going over the Discard Aggro deck that I used to win the North American Rise of the Underworld Seasonal Championship with. So, for those of you that don't know, I do a series on my YouTube channel called Deck Guides for Dummies, and this is basically just a bunch of deck guides and guides on the various like tier 1 decks, maybe new decks that pop up, and then sometimes I go back and revisit old decks that have been updated, and I go ahead and give up a new updated version of those, like I've recently done with Least and Deep. So, in this deck guide, I'm going to be going over why each card is in the deck, what purpose it serves, the general play pattern of the deck, and I'm going to go over generalized mulligans for each of the three major archetypes. So, before we get into the deck guide, I wanted to remind you guys that we're super close to hitting that 3,000 subscriber milestone. So, if you guys would do me a favor and go ahead and hit that subscribe button, it'd help me out so much with the YouTube algorithm, and we'll probably go and celebrate over on Twitch with a couple of 12-hour streams in a row, or maybe I got a little something special plan to start doing whenever we start hitting this 3,000 milestones. So that's going to be it for the intro. Let's get into the deck guide. Alright, so the first part of this video is going to be going over each card in the deck, the purpose it serves in the deck, and just kind of like generalize why it's here and what it provides to the deck. So we'll just start at the top and go all the way to the bottom. So Poro Cannon. Poro Cannon is actually like one of the most broken cards in the entire game. It's 0 mana, make 2 elusives, and it discards a card, which sometimes either doesn't matter, or in a lot of decks, the discarding actually helps now with all of the new cards coming out, like Scion is out, the whole Scion package, you're going to want to play 3 Poro Cannon in that deck. And this deck, and it also gives you 2 elusive blockers, which is really nice if you're getting beat down by elusive decks, but then also it's a really nice way to cheese lethal sometimes because your opponent just can't block you, or they ignore the 1/1 elusives for a long time because you have a bigger board, and then towards the end of the game they realize they're at like 2 or 3, and then you just kind of attack them in with your Poros and an axe or something like that. So Poro Cannon is nice. It's a nice cheeky way on 0 mana to discard stuff. There have been many times where I've like swung out on turns 2 or 3, and my opponent thinks, oh, he has no axe, he has no way to discard anything. They go to set up blocks, and then I 0 mana out of vision. Or I can 0 mana out like a survival skills or something like that. And your opponent will never, ever play around Poro Cannon out a vision, Poro Cannon out survival skills. I've had a lot of talks with other top players, and we all agree that it's almost always incorrect to play around Poro Cannon vision. It's such a niche thing to do, and such a like hard thing to play around, that it's really not worth playing around it. So if you ever do have that combo, no one's gonna play around it, and it's really insane. Jerry Rig and Flame Chompers kind of serve the same purpose. Both of these cards are just really cheap units that can be discarded. Jerry Rig's a little bit different. It's a little bit more broken because you can flash in a 1/1. So ideally, your turn 1 is going to be like Zonite Urchin, discard Jury Rig, and that's nice. You can burst speed out a Jury Rig or a Flame Chompers the turn you're about to play crowd favorite. Let's say you play Draven on turn 3. Well, turn 4 comes around, you can axe away either the Jury Rig or the Flame Chompers here, and that way you get just a burst speed unit in play, so your crowd favorite comes down on 4, and it's really big. We'll talk about crowd favorite here in a minute. So that's most of the reason why Jury Rig's in this deck, just to help you apply a little bit more pressure, go a little bit wide. This current version of the deck is a very swarmy, go wide, arena battlecaster, crowd favorite style deck. So being able to burst speed in a unit like this, even though it is a smaller unit and it isn't like it doesn't look like a threat, it can very quickly become like a 3/1 and stuff like that if it goes unblocked, and it makes your other units even scarier, and your visions and stuff like that. The wider your board is, the better this deck is going to do for you, and that's what Jerry Rig and Flame Chompers are really good at, is making your board go wide at 0 cost. So Legion Rearguard, I play this in the 1-drop slot over the Draven's Biggest Fan. A lot of people are still playing Draven's Biggest Fan. I was actually a huge advocate for Draven's Biggest Fan until until Make It Rain got buffed, and they undid the nerf and made it do 2 mana again. So because of that, 2 HP units is extremely important. That's why if you look at my Pirates deck that I'm going to post the video on tomorrow, all of the units, or almost all of the units in that deck, have 2 HP or more. Because Make It Rain is just such a big part of the meta that you just cannot afford to go turn 1 Zonite Urchin or turn 1 Draven's Biggest Fan, turn 2 House Spider. They Make It Rain you and you just lost 2/3 of your board. And it's just not a fun time. So that's why you play Rearguard. It's a lot better into these deal 1 damage, especially now with Go Hard coming back into the meta because of Cinna being printed and the Catalog of Regrets. Oh, okay. I don't know what just happened, but sorry, I got distracted there. Basically, because of Senate coming back and Go Hard coming back into the meta, 2 HP units is going to be very strong again. Zonite Urchin is here. It's just 1 mana, discard a card, draw 1, so it's really nice. It replaces itself and helps you with all of your discard synergies. You have your standard turn of like Zonite Urchin on turn 1, discard Jerry Rig, but then you have some nuts turns where you can go like turn 3, House Spider, Zonite, discard Vision, and it's just like absolutely bonkers. And we'll get into more of those during the play patterns and curves portion of the video. Which is what I'm most excited for, and I know that's what a lot of people ask for. Battlecaster, so I'm only playing 2 Battlecaster because Battlecaster is not a 2-drop. Stop playing Battlecaster on 2, especially with Rummage Nerf. Battlecaster is actually not that great anymore unless you have these like super wide turns of like turn 1 you play a 1-drop, turn 2 House Spider, turn 3 you have like Battlecaster and another 1-drop. So very specific turns is Battlecaster really good. Other than that, it's just super awkward, like unsynergistic with Crowd Favorite, because with Battlecaster you want to have a wide board early but then swing, and with Crowd Favorite you want to have a wide board early but not swing. I'll post my updated Discard Aggro list in the description as well as this one if you guys are interested. Because I'll probably just post the updated version because there's no reason to play old versions if they're not good. But the new updated version I have doesn't play Crowd Favorite and doesn't play Battlecaster, and that's because one, I think Crowd Favorite is really bad in this style of deck. I think it's good in this specific deck just because it's as good as we have, or it's as good as we had before we got new cards. But now you just play like, I forget the name of it. You can play this girl, Noble Rebel, and it's basically just a 3-mana Crowd Favorite a lot of the time. It's oh, I think I just broke my I think I broke my game. Okay, cool. We'll be right back. All right, we're back. So yeah, Noble Rider is just like, now it's just a strictly better Crowd Favorite because Crowd Favorite is 4 mana, so it comes out on turn 4 minimum, and then it's only as big as your units are on field, and that can be awkward because sometimes if I have a really wide board early on, I'd much rather just be swinging on the turns 2 and 3, right? And I want to be doing that, but because you have a Crowd Favorite in your hand, it really incentivizes you to not attack and instead go ahead and sit there and do nothing until your turn 4 you play the Crowd Favorite, and it just feels very unintuitive, and it's kind of unsynergistic, like I said, with your Visions and Battlecasters and stuff like that, and it feels bad. But with Noble Rebel now, Noble Rebel is a 3-mana 5/3 because you will always be able to discard 3 cards by turn 4. So the same turn you play the Crowd Favorite, this card is guaranteed a 5/3, which means you can go ahead and swing your board in and have a heyday on turns 1, 2, and 3. You don't have to worry about that with this card because you just slam it on 4, and now your opponent has to deal with a 5-power Crowd Favorite. If you top deck it, it's still a 5-power Overwhelm unit. If you top deck Crowd Favorite later on in the future, if you top deck this with no other units on board, it's a 5/3 Overwhelm. If you top deck this with no units or 1 unit on the board, it's a 2/1 Overwhelm or a 3/1 Overwhelm. So this card is at the very least, it's Crowd Favorite plus 3 units in play. So if you never have at least 3 units in play, Crowd Favorite is just going to be strictly worse than Noble Rebel, which is really, really not something I'm happy about with Crowd Favorite, but something I'm really excited about with Noble Rebel. So that's why I think Crowd Favorite is not that great. That's why I think Arena Battlecaster isn't that great. I also took out Arena Battlecaster for some other cards. But this is turning into a whole different video. We're going to get back on track here and talking about the cards in this deck and what they do. So we already went over Flame Chompers. It's the exact same thing as Jury Rig. House Spider is here to help you with that swarm plan. If ideally, your best curve in this deck is Zonite Urchin, discard Jury Rig, House Spider on 2, Draven on 3 with Vision. You get a big swing. And there you go. That's like your best curve because you went super wide on turns 1, 2, and 3. You should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like almost a full board on turn 5. Or I'm sorry, almost a full board on turn 3. and then you get to Axe Vision and buff your entire board, and things get out of control really fast, and a lot of decks can't keep up with that tempo. At most, they usually just went like play a unit on 1, play a unit on 2, play a unit on 3, and that's like best case scenario for most decks. A lot of decks don't even play 1-drops or play very few 1-drops and don't consistently have them. So if your opponent only has like 1 to 2 units in play, they're probably just half their health is gone on turn 3, which is absolutely nuts. 2 Rummage, this used to be an auto 3 of, but because Rummage got buffed or nerfed to 2 HP, or 2 cost, it's really, really hard to play 3 Rummage and discard. I actually went down to 1 Rummage for a very long time because it messes up a lot of your nut curves. You used to have multiple nut curves of like double rummaging on turn 2, or you would play like Battlecaster on turn 2, rummage away double Jury Rig or something like that, or rummage away Jury Rig Flame Chompers, and now all of a sudden you're attacking for 5 or 6 damage at burst speed on turn 2 that your opponent was not playing around. But because they nerfed Rummage, it made it a little bit harder to use with Jinx. It just made it a lot harder to use in the early game. It's basically only used with Jinx now to level Jinx and then possibly get a rocket in the same turn. You're never using it early to have any of these nut turns, or you're probably using it on like turn 3 at the earliest. So I could see going down to 1 Rummage. It's just very sad this card got nerfed, but at the same time, this was quite literally, no exaggeration, the best card in the entire game. If you look at any other card game, a 1-mana draw 2 is either banned or auto-played in every single deck, like max copies. Like if you look at Yu-Gi-Oh, the card's banned. If you look at Magic the Gathering, the card's banned. Pokemon's a little bit different, but every single card in Pokemon that has a draw effect like that, you just shove as many copies into your deck as you can. So it's 1-mana draw 2 is definitely not okay, so I'm glad they nerfed it, but also sad because the only deck it really affected was my deck of Discard Aggro. 3 Draven, of course, I'm not going to go over Draven. It's the perfect champion. 3-mana, 3/3 quick attack with value in the Axe. The Axe synergizes extremely well with the style of deck, so it's really, really great. 3, get excited. It's really good removal, and then also helps you with the discard synergy. Vision, this card is absolutely broken. Just buffs your entire team for 0 mana, and I don't know why. This card is nuts. And the very worst case, you can like just cast it for 3 burst mana, and it's not that bad. A lot of times I've done get excited on my opponent's face, discard Vision, and just like randomly burst out 6 to 7 damage, and it's absolutely nuts. Crowd favorite we went over. You just want to play this with a really wide board, and it helps you with your top end, and that's really good. And that's one of the main reasons you played this card, because you're already going wide in a lot of cases, and you do need a little bit of a way to help with your top end, like your mid game. A lot of the aggro matchups are small matchups, like elusives and stuff like that in the mirror match. Having a big crowd favorite can really just win you the game if your opponent doesn't also have a crowd favorite. But now you get to take this out and put in the new card that I was talking about earlier, Noble Rebel, and it's basically just crowd favorite but without a condition, and doesn't force you to play really awkward early turns of not attacking with your full board. Jinx, again, I'm not going to really go over Jinx. Jinx is just a really powerful unit. She's, I mean, the main reason you play this deck alongside with Draven. You empty your hand with Jinx. Jinx levels. You start drawing 2 cards a turn, which is really, really strong. And then you basically get a 1-mana Decimate every single turn, while also drawing 2 cards, which is absolutely nuts. On top of Jinx's champ spell is Get Excited, so it gives you even more burn, because if you have a Jinx in play and you start drawing a bunch of cards, you can draw into more Jinxes, and you just get more Jinx Get Excited. So it's really, really, really awesome that Jinx has a really good champion spell. Along with Draven's champion spell, Whirling Death, this one is a lot more niche, and it's actually harder for your opponents to play around. Like, your opponent will play around to Get Excited because you played 3 in your deck, but it's very rare that your opponent plays around Whirling Death, or a lot of players don't respect Whirling Death and play around Whirling Death. So it's very easy for you to catch your opponent out with Draven's spell. 2 survival skills. This is a meta call. So these last 2 cards, these 2 survival skills is a flex spot. Last seasonal, these were fervors because I needed more burn. We are in a meta with no lifesteal, and I really needed to find a way to deal the last couple points of damage. But in this meta, we're in a quick attack and vulnerable meta with all of the Shurima, Shurima Demacia, Shurima Ionia, Demacia, Ionia, stuff like that, where people are bringing in these quick attack challenger style effects. So being able, if you can play Draven on 3 and they try to go, if you go Draven on 3, they give it vulnerable, and then turn 4, they pull it in with the Sivir. If they pull your Draven with the Sivir and you just act survival skills, the game's over. If you ever blow your opponent out with act survival skills, the game is over. If you can do that with your crowd favorite, it's nuts. Another big thing about survival skills is it negates lifesteal. Something I did in my round 9 against Kever, in the Swiss of the top 32 was he attacked me with a 4/2 life linker. The oh man, I forgot the name of it. The Fey Guide. It wasn't Fey Guide. Whatever. You guys know what I'm talking about. Tasty Faefolk. The 3-mana 4/2 lifelink. He attacked me with that. I was able to give my unit survival skills. It was like a 2/1. So because of that, I blocked the Faefolk and he gained literally 0 life. Because the way the interaction works is your allies can't drop below 1 HP, so damage is basically negated once your unit goes to 1 HP. So because the unit was a 2/1 already, it just negated all of the damage, and lifesteal works as heal for the amount of damage I've done. So because the unit isn't doing any damage, because my survival skills unit is already at 1 HP, you're not gaining any life because you're not doing any damage. It's the same concept of barrier. If you barrier a unit that and a lifesteal unit strikes the barrier, because barrier says negate all damage done, you don't gain any lifesteal. Same thing with survival skills. If your opponent attacks something that has survival skills on it, it will only deal damage down to 1 HP. So if you're attacking me with a 10/10 and I have a 2/2, you will gain 1 life because you will deal 1 damage, put my unit down to 1 HP, and then as soon as my unit's at 1 HP, you stop dealing damage. So that's a really nice trick that you guys can do to negate a bunch of lifesteal, and I was actually able to use that to negate my opponent from gaining 4 life on me in round 9 of the Swiss rounds. And then 3 Augmented Experimenter. This card is just broken, guys. Stop playing 2, stop playing 1. I don't know who told you to start playing 1 and 2 Augmented Experimenters, but that is literally just incorrect. It's just like unfathomably incorrect. Discard is nuts. The biggest thing about Discard that makes it so broken, and a lot of top players like agree on this, is Augmented Experimenter. It's the fact that you feel like you're doing okay against Discard, you run them out of cards, and then they go Augmented Experimenter, kill a unit, and then draw 3 cards. Like, that tempo swing is huge. It's basically Tri-Beam. It's if Tri-Beam gave you a 3/3 100% of the time, but then also drew you 3 cards. Like, you think Tri-Beam is nuts because it kills a unit and then summons a unit. Imagine if Tri-Beam killed a unit, summoned a unit, but then also refilled your hand. Like, that's absolutely nuts, and I don't know why people aren't playing more, 3 of these. People say, oh, well, it's because it's so awkward. I draw 2 early on every single time. Then you're probably mulliganing incorrectly, but that's fine because we're going to get into the mulligan guide here in a couple of minutes. But yeah, always play 3 Experimenter in every single Discard Aggro style deck. But that's going to be it for this first portion of the video of going over why each card's in the deck. Now we're going to go over the play patterns of the deck, the different curves, and then we're going to go over the general mulligans against each archetype. Alright, so now we're going to talk about the play pattern of the deck and a lot of the different curves of the deck. So there's honestly an insane amount of combos and nut curves you can pull off with Discard, and that's what makes Discard Aggro just absolutely nuts. The thing people say about Discard all the time is like, oh, it's just a high roll deck. Oh, you just have to high roll. The deck isn't actually that good. You just get a nut curve and you lose, and that, like, that's true. That's actually true. The thing is that Discard has so many different high rolls and different combo options that you will always be high rolling if you just mulligan correctly. So that's why this deck is so powerful. As people say, oh, I just got nutted on again. Oh, there's Discard Aggro, nut drawing. Oh, Mo, you drew the nuts. Of course you're gonna, like, of course you win. Oh, you drew the nuts again. Oh, you're so lucky you drew the nuts. It's like, yes, like, people that play Discard Aggro a lot and mulligan correctly do, in fact, draw the nuts almost every game they play. But if you pay close attention and you notice, it's usually not the same nuts every single game. It's usually something different. Like, you use the term, oh, this Discard player drew the nuts 5 games in a row, but if you look and you notice that they drew 5 completely different curves and 5 completely different combos, they all just so happen to be, like, nutty-ass combos, then you start to realize, like, oh, wait, there's actually, like, a little bit more to this deck than I thought, or that's why it's so powerful. So it's a lot about being able to just take your hand and kind of freestyle with it and be like, oh, this is what I have to work with. Let me see what is the nuttiest turn 2, turn 3, turn 4 I can come up with. And that's actually what separates the really, really, really good Discard players from the Discard players that just play like their cards on curve and don't look for any of these like nutty curves. And that's something you can really notice with a lot of people that do play Discard a lot of the time, is they make it look really smooth and really flawless, but that's just because they've played so many games. Like, I've played so many games with Discard that if I see a nut curve, most of the time I just kind of do it because I've probably played it before. You know, that's not always true. There are definitely new curves that I've found more recently. Like, for instance, there's a curve that I'm going to talk about here in a second that I literally just found out about, like, the day after seasonals, and I was like, wow, this like is a really really insane turn. And it's like a turn 3 kill, and it's just absolutely nuts. But for the most part, I've played so many games that have done a lot of these curves. So if you have any combination of like Poro Cannon, Zonite Urchin, or Vision, that's how you can start to look to set up a freestyle, like some type of curve or combo. If you have any of those combination of those 3 cards, those are the 3 cards that are mainly used in a lot of these nut curves, as you'll come to see. So if you don't know if you have a nut curve, or if you're not quite sure, if you have any combination of Zonite, Poro Cannon, and Vision, you probably have a nut curve, or you can probably make one. You're probably just 1 card off at the very worst from it. So with all that intro said of like why this deck feels disgusting, why it always feels like you're getting nutted on, it's because you are. It's just usually different types of curves. So I'm just gonna get into like just a couple combos here, because if I were to try to go over every single nut combo possibly like imaginable from Discard Aggro, this video would be like, that could be its own separate hour-long video with how many different curves there are with this deck, with how many different like shenanigans you can pull off. So we're just gonna go over 3, one with Zonite Urchin, one with Poro Cannon, and then just your bread and butter curve. So your bread and butter, just a very basic curve that you like to see, is going to be turn 1 Zonite, discard a Jerry Rig, turn 2 House Spiders, turn 3 Draven Vision. That is extremely standard, and I say this all the time when people tell me, what are you looking to do with this deck? You just go 1 drop, House Spider, Draven Vision. The reason I say Zonite Jury Rig is because it just helps you go out with the Vision, but in realistic scenarios, you can go like Poro Cannon, discard Jury Rig, you can go 1 mana Legion Rearguard. Just basically any turn 1 play a unit or play multiple units, and then turn 2 House Spider. The House Spider can also be replaced with a Poro Cannon. Like, here's another nut curve that I didn't even have on my list that I just thought of, is if you go turn 1 Legion Rearguard, turn 2 you can go Poro Cannon, discard a Jury Rig or a Flame Chompers, play 2 Poros, turn 3 Draven Vision. Now you have 4 damage and elusives for no reason, and like you still have an extremely wide board. You're still going to have a 5-unit board with Vision on turn 3, and almost half of your board's going to be elusive. And if you discard a Flame Chompers, one of your units is going to have Challenger, so you can make sure that you kill any cheap unit that your opponent played, because that unit's now going to have Vision on it. Or because you discarded it with the Poro Cannon, you can even axe Vision on the Jury Rig, and now you can kill any like 2-drop even that your opponent played, because you can give your Jury Rig 2 damage. So I can go into these combos all day, but that's basically your bread and butter, is some type of turn 1 unit play, turn 2 put 2 units down or multiple units down, and then turn 3 Draven Vision. Draven Axe, discard Vision is really good. A nut curve you can do with Zonite Urchin, and this is one that I learned about the day after seasonals, is actually a turn 3 kill. You go turn 1, it's really any 1-drop. So that's like Rearguard or Poro Cannon, discard Jerry Rig, something like that. But this can be done with either you hit them for 3 damage or 2 damage, and then turn 2 you play House Spider. And then turn 3, you play any 2-cost unit, so like Battlecaster, House Spider, anything like that. And then you play Zonite Urchin, discard Vision. If you went turn 1 Rearguard, turn 2 House Spider, and then turn 3 you played Battlecaster, Zonite, discard Vision, that's a 19 damage turn 3. That is literally a turn 3 kill if your turn 1 attack was able to go through. So like, that's nuts, and I just found out about that the other day. So there you go, there's a turn 3 kill with Discard Aggro. And then another nut curve that I just immediately thought of with Poro Cannon is turn 1 Zonite, discard Jury Rig, turn 2 House Spiders, and then if you're attacking on 2 you can just do Poro Cannon, discard Vision, and that's a 10 damage turn 2. So this curve is really good because now you also just have these like large units that you're not supposed to have. Sometimes your opponent tries to get in for value blocks if you do something like this, and they typically don't play a 1-drop, but if they played some type of 2-drop with 2 HP or 3 HP even, you can get a nice attack in. And then if they try and do like a value block of like, oh, I have a 2/3 block your 2/2 House Spider, you discard Vision, boom, you make that trade, and you still have 5 or 4 damage you're getting across with, 5 damage you're getting across with, and it's still, you know, 25% of their health on turn 2, and we take those. So these are, again, just the nut curves that I thought of off the top of my head. There are many, 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 many more, and as long as you have some form of Poro Cannon, Zonite Urchin, and Vision, you can probably set up one of these nut curves. So that's going to be it for this portion of the video of going into the different curves and the play patterns of the deck. And we're going to go just right into how to mulligan against aggro, how to mulligan against mid-range, and how to mulligan against control. Alright, so in this last portion of the video, we're going to go over general mulligan guide, and then a mulligan tip to mulligan for each archetype, so whenever you're playing against control decks, aggro decks, and mid-range decks. So your general mulligan guide is just going to be your very simple 1-drop and then 2-drop Draven Vision. So this is going to be either like your Zonite Urchin Discard Jury on turn 1, your Legion Rearguard on turn 1, and then turn 2, I say 2 units on turn 2, because this means you're either going to play a House Spider, or you're going to play like Poro Cannon, discard something, play both Poros. You're just trying to go as wide as possible early on, and then that way you can slam down that Draven Vision, or you can do something crazy like Zonite Vision on turn 3. Basically some type of Vision play on turn 3, and that's like going to be a really, really big curve, and that's just your average curve. That's what you're mulliganing for. You're just mulliganing for cheap units. Cards you never want to keep in your opener are Jinx, Crowd Favorite, and I forgot his name, the Battlecaster. Jinx, Crowd Favorite, Battlecaster, and the Experimenter. So these 4 cards you will never want to keep in your opener. I'd say maybe not never, that's a really harsh word, so I'd say like 99% of the time you don't want these cards in your opener. The only exception here is you can keep Crowd Favorite in your opener, but only if the rest of your hand complements Crowd Favorite really well. This means if your hand is like exactly Zonite Discard Jury into the House Spider into maybe like second House Spider. Like if you can guarantee to have a 7-power Crowd Favorite on turn 4, then you can keep it, but that's still a little risky, because if your opponent ever removes your units, or if you have to block, or if you just don't plan on attacking, then you can play Crowd Favorite on 4, but if your opponent's still at 20 HP and then they just like kill the Crowd Favorite, you essentially wasted your first 3 turns to do nothing, your first 4 turns to do nothing, and it feels really, really bad. But yeah, so those are the cards you aren't going to really ever want to keep in your opener 99% of the time. And so now I'm going to tell you about the cards you will want to keep against specific archetypes. So cards you're going to want to keep generally, like I said, was 1-drop, 2-drop Draven Vision. Cards against aggro. The biggest key card against aggro is going to be House Spiders. Discard Aggro is an anti-aggro aggro deck because you get to play House Spiders, and House Spider is a very insane anti-aggro tool, as well as you get to play things like Draven, which aggro decks can't deal with, and then eventually if you get a Jinx and a Jinx Rocket, a lot of aggro decks that play these 1 HP units, you're just going to board wipe them. Against Spiders, all you have to do is go wide with like House Spiders and stuff, and if you draw 1 Vision, all of your stuff can now block Fearsome units. Eventually you just get a Jinx Rocket, all of their units have 1 HP, so you just board wipe them, and they lose the game. Against aggro, the most important units again are going to be House Spiders, and then you are going to want this Crowd Favorite against aggro, because typically most aggro decks cannot actually kill a Crowd Favorite, and Crowd Favorite allows you to have a really big body and apply pressure to your opponent, and then you're able to trade away and block all of your other smaller units once you actually get to play the Crowd Favorite. So that's why it's really big in the aggro matchups. In the mid-range matchups, the cards you're really, really going to want to see are going to be your Undying card. I forget the name of it. It's Survival Skills. You're really going to want to see your Survival Skills. You're going to want to see Draven. Outside of that, that's about it. You're going to want that low to the ground curve. A lot of mid-range decks can't actually deal with your low to the ground curve. The way the mid-range decks beat you is because they go 1 for 1 with you starting on like usually turns 2, or they get a lot of value turn 3 after. So if you can open with an extremely explosive one of these nutty like turn 1 and 2 and 3 openers, to where by the time they start playing their units on turn 3, like against Shurima, right? If they don't play their 1-drop and all they do is play Auction on 2, which is a 2/2, that doesn't matter to you, and then they play Gifts for Arda Gifts for Renekton on turn 3, then you're gonna just outvalue them because you played a whole bunch of units and your board's gonna be way wider than them, and it's gonna be impossible for them to actually match you and match board presence, so they're gonna fall behind, and it's gonna be really hard for them to catch back up. And that's how you beat the mid-range decks. So Survival Skills is extremely important against mid-range matchups, and your Draven is extremely important against mid-range matchups. And against Control, your most important cards here are going to be Draven, Jinx, and Crowd Favorite. Playing against Control is going to be really, really tricky, because if they do start removing your units, then your Crowd Favorite gets really, really bad. However, if you're against maybe an inexperienced Control player, or if the Control player is being really passive and is not proactively removing your units, it can be really easy for you to slam Draven, slam Crowd Favorite. You want to try and bait as much removal out of their hand as possible, so that way when you play your Jinx can actually live and then start winning you the game with all of these different style burns. Control is definitely the hardest matchup for a Discard Aggro. So if you lose that matchup, don't feel bad. But the way I typically try and beat it is just by playing enough large units that I tax all of their removal spells and hopefully can run them out of removal spells. So by the time I get to play this Jinx later on, then I'm feeling pretty good about myself. So those are the general mulligan guide and what to mulligan against for each of the different archetypes. Now we're just going to get into some gameplay footage. Unfortunately, I don't have too much gameplay footage from the top 32 of seasonals, so like when I actually won, because after the second round, once I got into top 8, my top 8, my semifinals, and my grand finals opponent all banned my discard aggro out against me. So I basically just have the game of top 32 with Discard Aggro, and then I'm just going to show you some different games from the Swiss rounds of the tournament with Discard Aggro. So that's going to be it for this video. I know it's going to be a little bit longer, but hey, you guys want gameplay and a deck guide video in the exact same video, so I'm just trying to give you guys what you asked for. Let me know if you still like this, or if you'd rather it be maybe 2 separate videos or something like that. I'm not really sure what to do, but if you guys do enjoy these long videos, that's great. Let me know in the comments below what deck you guys want to see in a deck guide next. I hope you guys enjoy the gameplay. Make sure to like, subscribe, join my Discord in the description below, and the deck link will also be in the description below. That's going to be it. Enjoy the games.